I'm your moderator, Katrina Grant Aguilar, and with us is our facilitator or presenter for the afternoon session, Mr. Angus Smith. All right, so we have some housekeeping matters. So we have the introduction, after which we will have his presentation, and we will try and facilitate question and answers. We will facilitate question and answers during a 10-minute period. So bear with us. Thank you for joining. I'll just do a brief introduction as persons continue to join. We have 16 persons already. Welcome to our breakout session. And this one is incident response, resilient digital transformation, and credit unions. I'm getting a feedback. Angus, would you mute your mic, please? Thank you. All right, so Mr. Smith is the head of Trinidad and Tobago's Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, TTCSIRT, for the past 6 years. He has been involved in cybersecurity for 9 years, ICT for 20 years, and security management for 26 years. Wow, 26 years. Mr. Smith has been instrumental in the development of the National Cybersecurity Program for Trinidad and Tobago, implemented the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, that's TTCSIRT, which is a National Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. He is involved in a number of national digital transformation projects, focusing on cybersecurity elements of these projects, and is a member of the National ICT Steering Committee. Mr. Smith is the holder of a BSc in Computer Science and an MSc in Strategic Leadership Management. Awesome. We're happy to have you, Mr. Smith, and we are looking forward to your presentation. So we have 24 persons. I think we should just maximize, and you may go right ahead. Persons will join us as we go along. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Kat, and thanks for the introduction. Nice to meet, everyone. As you heard before, my name is Mr. Angus Smith. I'm the manager of the TTC CERT. The TTC CERT is the incident response unit of the Trinidad and Tobago government. In essence, we started off as a government CERT. We are now helping the private sector additionally, so we are transforming into a national CCERT. For those who understand that, so we started off with government responsibility, responsible for government agencies and ministries, and we do provide assistance, as I said before, to the public sector. In essence, the private sector organizations, when we do, based on resources or when we can. So today I'm here to speak about incident response, resilience, and digital transformation and the Caribbean Credit Union. That topic covers a number of interesting areas that currently we see as significant in the region of finance, again, where it's relevant to credit unions. So I'll just want to shed some light, in essence, as to the situation based on Trinidad and Tobago. So based on my experience in incident response in Trinidad and Tobago, I just want to share some of the things that we see, some of the threats that we see. We try to just delve into the areas and then maybe give some guidance on incident response. So the current situation that we have in the world today, wait, just now, I think I did not share this presentation.
You're trying to share your slides, right? We have some more persons joining us, so give you.
I think you are seeing the slides now, right?
All right, so I'll give you a chance. I think you want to wait another minute,
Okay,
just so more persons can join us. Just another minute.
All right, that's quite fine.
Thank everyone for joining us thus far, and you are at Incident Response, Resilience, Digital Transformation, and Caribbean Credit Unions. Housekeeping matters. Of course, we'll have our presentation. Angus, you could go ahead and mute just for a minute. Just for a minute.
Okay, I could go ahead.
No, you could mute just for a minute so I can make an announcement. All right, thank you very much. So thank you and welcome to the session again. I'd just like to tell you the topic, incident response resilience, digital transformation and Caribbean credit unions. Our facilitator, Mr. Angus Smith, if you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. Thank you. We hope to have a very insightful, very informative presentation, after which we'll facilitate the question and answer segment. I'm your facilitator, moderator for the session, Katrina Grant Diaguilar. You could type something in the chat so we know you're here. Thank you very much. All right. So they said visit Technosoft booth. That's something that randomly pops up in our chat. So if you're here, just send us something in the chat and we are waiting for you. We have an exciting presentation lined up. All right, Mr. Smith, I think we could go ahead. Over to you, Angus.
Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, good. Right, so yes, good afternoon again for those who have just joined us. So we want to start off this presentation about incident response, resilience, and digital transformation in the Caribbean and the Caribbean Credit Union. As I said before, I would just give a little insight into how these 3 areas kind of come together, and more so with a little bit of guidance on incident response. So the world as we know it today, subjected to the COVID pandemic, I would see it as an agent of change. It has brought a number of changes within the environment. Some of these changes have impacted a lot of us in very different ways. Some increasing your online activity for those who, we are home now, we are home a little bit more, you have nowhere to go, so you have more free time. You tend to browse a little bit more. We're doing online classes with our kids, with yourself, that kind of thing. Some of the things that people are doing too is looking at applications for financial aid and services from the various governments across the region. As I said, we work from home. That provides remote access to your workplace, increased online commerce. A lot of us doing shopping, we're doing facilitating online banking, and in the case of the credit unions, would be able to facilitate online banking especially. And currently, I don't know how much territories may have online vaccine appointments. In Trinidad, we tried doing it with WhatsApp and social media. We are soon to hopefully move to our online platform to deliver appointments. Hopefully that would work. So these are some of the changes that actually impact upon us with just the COVID pandemic, just changing just how we do things on an everyday basis. Digital transformation projects. So because of this pandemic and the need to give people access from remotely, from home, online, we have a number of countries I would gather within the region, businesses, organizations, and I gather the credit union is no exception, trying to facilitate that digital transformation, taking the services online, providing online banking, card facilities, a lot of things that used to be you have to go into a branch now. I know a lot of people trying to, or a lot of organizations trying to facilitate it through this new online platform, digital systems, which enables all your customers to have a different experience, a new experience, just to meet this new change in the environment, these changes in the environment. As a result of these changes, the organizations can be impacted by cyber threats. There are a lot of different threats within the sphere of the world today, and we are significantly impacted by some of them, some more than others. I will just give a little bit of insight into what we see as an incident response team in Trinidad and Tobago per se. Some of the threats really span across the region. In essence, a lot of the Caribbean countries would have some similar threats. They would suffer the same problems. So it is not just relevant to Trinidad and Tobago. It's relevant to a lot of the other countries, even the wider world in essence. These threats can be anything as you see here: worms, hackers, spam, viruses. This is just to give you a kind of precursor into this could be, these are just some of the idea of what type of threats it is. So we would now look at some of the threats that can impact on credit unions. Now, these threats are what we see in Trinidad and Tobago. They can impact on any business, whether it's large or small businesses. Credit unions are no exceptions. And we have seen these attacks in the Caribbean and especially Trinidad and Tobago. Malware, and then you may have heard a lot about malware, especially ransomware and phishing attacks, where threat actors would use ransomware to actually steal your data, steal your data and ask you for a payment in essence to either retrieve your data or what you would call double jeopardy now. You will not be able to, they do something called data disclosure, which in the context of stealing your data with the ransomware, they would ask for payment. And sometimes even if you do pay them the Bitcoin and they will ask for payment in Bitcoin, they still may not provide you with your data back. They will actually disclose your data online in the dark web, and now you have, in essence, what you call double jeopardy. You don't have access to your data, and in essence, if the data is confidential information, a lot of times it would be available to persons to retrieve on the dark web. We have seen denial of service attacks where a lot of services, websites have been attacked, in particular services relating to either the pandemic or in the context of sites that may be facilitating aid, or in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, we have seen some things like exemptions where you have to apply for certain types of exemptions to either get to the country or to access a service. They would suffer from denial of service attacks. ATM skimming, you would see that. Pandemic team attacks using COVID to solicit personal information. So they would, again, these are some of the things, the attacks that tend to affect organizations. Supply chain attacks. Some of you may have heard about the SolarWinds attack, which affected a number of businesses. Even Trinidad and Tobago, there were attacks that were facilitated via the fact that they used the particular software. This was a third-party vendor, in a sense, or supplier, what we would call a supply chain entity that provides services towards organizations, and their software and infrastructure was attacked, and then that facilitated and then now had a downstream effect to organizations. Fraudulent wire payments. This is business email compromise. Business email compromise would be facilitated. A lot of times somebody would either contact your business, tell them that, look, they would actually want to change a bank account or change the person who has authorization to the bank account, and then actually engineer a fraudulent wire payment to another account. We have seen that happen a lot of times, and that is just through that type of attack that would facilitate these fraudulent wire payments. We have seen also, these are new threats in essence where credit unions, banking has moved to chip cards. They tend to facilitate where you could use your card you could use or make purchases without your card present. They have actually started to, you see cases of increased fraud using these type of attacks. Online unauthorized access to financial accounts, again, all these are facilitated. Some of the attacks that we see, or we get reports of saying that people are trying to get access to their accounts, trying to facilitate money transfers by getting access to the financial accounts. Use of social media to impersonate a company's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. Now, a lot of, we see in attacks, or we see in these cases where persons are impersonating the Facebook attacks of, let's say, a company, let's say a credit union in a sense, and actually trying to get personal information from customers. So you may you may have a Facebook page as a credit union, and the attacker clones your Facebook page and then lends or may respond to a Twitter post that you have put out on your Facebook page and redirect them to a fraudulent page in order to collect information from the customer. And they would try that from time to time to see, well, what type of information they could get if the person would give them or provide their personal information, whether it's account logon, that kind of information. So those are some of the threats that we see within the environment currently, and they actually impact upon whether small or medium, small businesses, the credit union size businesses, from no matter what sizes you see, they impact these type of organizations. So these are just some of the threats within the environment that we see. Down. So we would go into some of the reasons for these attacks. I'll try to give just some factors that may be that help cause or help these attacks to occur. So is related to people, the process, and technology, and you may have heard that before. So based on people is lack of cyber hygiene practices. Cyber hygiene practices is just letting people know you perform in your house or home that you would actually have proper hygiene practices. It's similar in the digital environment or in your cyberspace or on work. You would actually have measures that you would take, having a proper password, ensuring that you a cleanliness policy, ensuring that you don't share information with persons who are supposed to share it. You're not supposed to put out your information online, protecting your systems. Those are some of the things that you would have to do, having proper practices within the environment and within the organization. Like a cyber awareness program. So as a company or as a credit union, it is advisable that you have, or you need to have some form of cyber awareness program to educate your users, both staff and customers, as to proper security practices. Again, based on things like passwords, sharing your information, how to protect your data. Those are things that you could give them awareness and make your staff and customers aware of the threats that can impact their data. Lack of trained staff or staff assigned to the task of responding to cyber issues. So you have to train or have staff trained to be able to respond to cyber issues within your organization, cybersecurity issues. So if you need to train them, you need to ensure that you have someone trained, identify a person, a staff, a resource that can respond or be able to understand when an incident happens and what they need to do. Risk management approach. We'll talk about processes. You have to have a risk management approach for identifying cybersecurity risks, which means you need to understand your business, understand what can be, in terms of your assets, what you have, what are your main functions, your critical assets, your critical processes, and ensure that you assess the risks to them, especially cyber risks to them, so that you could actually plan in order to mitigate against the threats. Cyber security policies. A lot of organizations may not have, again, stemming from the people having the persons to develop a cybersecurity policy. A cybersecurity policy would guide how you would operate within your environment. Again, guiding things like your information security policy, how you would protect data, what you would do with customer information, with the organization, or with organizational information. You need to have a policy that helps to guide the organization as to how we should treat with it, what we should do, and how we should operate in the context. Having a BCP and DR data recovery policy, those are also important elements within the organization to help protect the organization and to ensure resilience. Now, one of the topics of the conference is resilience. Now, that is something that we would look at going down the road, and these are some of the elements that would help to develop a resilient organization and ensure that you can function in the event of a cyber attack. So this is the theme that we're going with. We want to guide you as to things that you could do to help protect your organization. Technology. Inadequate or non-existent updates and patches. And these issues that I'm talking about here are things that we actually see when we go to treat with incidents and to treat with cybersecurity breaches. You would discover these shortcomings, for want of a better word, in the organization. We have encountered a lot of these particular specific problems in the context of inadequate, non-existent update and patch management. You have hardware and software within your organization. You need to treat with it, patch it, update, ensure that those are some of the key vulnerabilities that would allow an attacker to get to your organization or to get access to your hardware, your software, your data, and actually compromise it. Misconfigured hardware devices, your firewalls, your network devices, your servers, desktops. These are all elements of your organization, your network, your data network. You need to ensure that they are configured properly. They are actually configured to do the function that they're supposed to do. They ensure that they are configured, and you always need to check them periodically to ensure that the configuration, have a configuration or a baseline standard configuration, and ensure that your technicians or your personnel are actually configuring these devices correctly. We have seen a lot of misconfigured devices which cause breaches, which cause vulnerabilities within the organization. Again, as I said, software, VPN access. One of the biggest threats that we discovered over the time since the pandemic started, various organizations who use VPNs, either the VPN configuration wasn't correct, the software that they use had vulnerabilities and needed to be patched or needed to be fixed in essence. And they provided attackers with significant windows into organizations in order to compromise them. We had to help a lot of organizations identify that your VPN has holes, you need to fix it, you need to patch it. Web applications and websites. A lot of people would tend to build a website and not, in essence, update it, look for holes or vulnerabilities, and wherein that a misconfigured website could allow, if you have data or you have data online that is accessible to your organization, because a lot of people would build a website and it would just be informational. It would just have information about the organization, about the services, and not tie into a particular backend system. If you have a website that actually ties into a backend system or provides a type of service that actually goes back to some form of database or some form of data store, you need to ensure that the website or the web application is actually properly configured, updated, patched to a standard that would allow it to not be accessible from online. A lot of people ignore this, or I don't know if they're not aware that they're supposed to ensure that their website and their web application, simple thing as having a web application firewall for a web application, which helps to protect the application from attacks. So there are simple things that you could do, but these are some of the problems that we encounter, and they cause significant problems for organizations. These are just some instances or cases of attacks that have occurred. There's a credit union in Washington. As you see, this is a seemingly large credit union, and they were attacked, or they were affected by scams targeting customers asking for personal information. Acquisition of member information. The attackers tried to get the members, their account information on the black market through the breach to attempt to break into the member accounts. Now, some of the credit unions here may not have, or in the region may not be online to that extent, may not have that type of customer base, but at the end of the day, the Caribbean has been a region, or is a region that it seems to be growing in being a target, or being identified as a target because of, again, the nature of what cyber attacks do. They look at the easiest targets to now attempt to break or breach these organizations. So we are starting to, in essence, grow or become more identified as a target. So even though you may deem that your organization is small or may not have that type of financial outlay, you still can be a target, and your organization and your information can become suspect to attacks or become susceptible to attacks. Again, the SolarWinds attack put financial institutions on alert across the world, not just the Caribbean, once their software became susceptible or vulnerable. In Trinidad, we had Ansa McCall Tattel had a ransomware attack, which actually they posted a lot of the information on the dark web, and that is some of the things that could happen to you. Now, some cases you might be lucky that if they do get some information, it may not be critical information, but you never know when your breach could actually impact on your critical information and put, in this case, a credit union, customer card information, account information online, and you have it now being sold on the dark web. Again, as I was saying, social media cloning scams, impersonating Facebook pages to receive account information, and they would then now use that type of engineering to get your personal information, maybe ask you to divulge your account information, your logon information in some cases, and those are the things that we have to be wary of. So those are just some of the things that actually directly are attacks and have happened within the various regions, at least in this part of the world, and we can be affected by these type of attacks. So that would lead me now to all these attacks that can affect the credit union per se, as we're dealing with credit unions, financial institutions. You need resilience. You need to be able to bounce back from the attack. You need to ensure that you can function after that type of attack. And how do we do this? In the first instance, we have to understand what cyber resilience is and why we would want to be resilient. Cyber resilience is just the ability of an organization to recover, to continue working while attack happens, or it tries to prevent the attack, to control, detect, and recover from the threat that happens. It's really about you having the ability to, even though you may be attacked, to continue functioning as a business, continuing what is your core business in essence, without having your services be rendered inoperable or unavailable. We would see the cyber resilience framework is made up of a governance, which would be policies, and I would go into a little bit more in terms of what the governance structure is, wherein that you have to have a governance structure really and truly, which would be the policies, the overarching strategy that you would have to manage a cyber attack. And then you have a process by which you recover, in essence, from the cyber attack. And ultimately, this is an iterative process where you would actually identify attacks, identify your assets, your systems, your data, and ensure that you understand what your critical functions are. So one of the things you have to do, you have to identify your assets, ensure that you know what your business is about, know what are your critical assets, your systems, your data, and ensure that is kept in what we would call an asset register in the first instance. Once you have that, you can start to now develop a plan in place to now recover. So you would identify that these are critical things. We need to put special measures in place and know how to mitigate against the threats. To protect, you need your critical services. You have to put systems in place, put hardware in place, or that can help to protect your system. That is why having a firewall, at least having a good intrusion detection system, also having antivirus at least to now identify threats when they do happen within your organization, in order to again start to protect your organization from these threats. And these are very important things to help you. Detecting events, having a system put in place to now protect, to be proactive. You can actually detect before they happen, or if you see instances of and what we would call anomalies or variances in terms of normal operations, you would actually see activity that can lead you to determine that there's a potential breach that might be happening, a data leak before it happens, so that at the end of the day, you have a baseline of your organization's network and its performance. When you see anomalies, that will be able to help you now determine that something might be happening strange here. You could get alerts, you could be warned to now actually put measures in place to protect your organization from being breached in essence. Respond. When a breach happens, you need to know how to respond, and you need to respond in a timely manner in order to be resilient in essence and to recover from this incident in a timely manner. Again, the key objective is to ensure that the business functions or continues to function. So in the case of the credit union, you would want to continue functioning, providing financial services, card services, money transfer services to your customers in essence. And that is something you don't want to be done as much as possible, or you want to limit any downtime that you would have. So the goal is really to respond in a timely manner to get these services back up, as opposed to maybe identifying who the breach or who is the threat actor in a sense, something that you would want that to happen. But in a case like a credit union or a critical infrastructure, and a credit union would be deemed a critical infrastructure of information infrastructure of any country, as aligned to the financial services and banking. You would want to now ensure that your operations keep functioning without a hitch in a sense, or without any downtime. Recovery is really about restoring the affected systems, ensuring that whatever the attacker breached you could actually recover your information and continue again to function, to ensure that the services that were compromised, you get it back up and running, and ensure that these things, you can continue functioning in business. All that is tying into being resilient. So once you can put this framework in place and ensure that you have measures, steps, policies, to procedures to do these actions or to take this type of action, you should be on the road to developing a level of resiliency within your organization. A cybersecurity framework is also part of, or what we would term part of the resilient framework. This is just to give you an idea that even if you use as we looked at before, the cyber resilience framework, these are some of the things that would impact upon you developing this resilient framework and identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering your organization. So as I was speaking before, identifying your assets, understanding your business environment, having the governance structure, doing a risk assessment, looking at your organization and assessing the risk, identifying what can be risky elements of your organization, and then putting plans in place and having a risk management strategy so you can know what type of risks you could accept and the ones that you have to really deal with and put mitigation strategies in it in order to deal with it. Protecting is dealt on access control, username, passwords, ensuring that only the people who are supposed to have access to infrastructure, have access to systems, and the right persons have access to what they need to, and not necessarily the whole organization. It must be clearly identified that you could actually know who's accessing and when they access and what they have access to. Again, awareness and training. All this is proactive measures to help. Data security. We must understand what data security is and putting these policies in place in order to protect the data that we have, where we can, again, things like DLP to put the in terms of what we call data loss protection measures, again, identifying what is critical data and put in necessary controls and protections for it. Having the processes and procedures so that when information come in or out of the organization, we could actually track it, we could understand where it's going, who has, back again, tying into access control, who are the persons who are allowed to access the data. Maintenance, we could talk about updating and protecting the organization, ensuring that the hardware and software that we have a maintenance structure, we have a configuration management policy that could actually allow us to look at the baseline in terms of our software and hardware configurations and ensure that we know when updates come out and when patches come out, we actually do that and ensure that we actually update them and ensure that they're actually done in a timely manner. Protective technology, again, firewalls, intrusion detection systems, information control systems, all of these things actually help to protect the data and protect the organization in order to be resilient. In order to detect threats, we need to understand what are threats. Subscribing to and understanding what anomalies and events are means we must have a baseline in terms of the function and how our network functions. And we could be able to, when we see behavior that is not what it's supposed to be in the organization, we could actually use that and identify and use these anomalies and events to help now realize that we need something wrong is happening. Now, this can happen with persons too in terms of the behavior. You have staff that will actually perform certain functions. They will have access to certain types of information or certain systems within your organization. If you also see persons who trying to access information that is really not theirs or systems and they are not really allowed to, it could mean, or from a desktop that might be assigned to somebody, you need to understand that that may be a red flag. You need to look at that and realize that, hey, something is going off here. We need to look at it. It may be an anomaly, it may be an event. So it's really having a wide look at it or open view as to, it's not just the system itself, it's not just the hardware, the software, or something attacking that part of your network, but also looking at the people and how they function and what they do and some of the tasks that you could do if you're looking at monitoring and managing the anomalies and the event. Again, that's what's talking about security, continuous monitoring. You have to be able to monitor your organization on a regular basis. Somebody must be assigned to look at your cyber systems and be able to monitor in some way. And not monitor to be intrusive, but monitor in terms of, again, behavior, patterns, trends in the context of type of traffic that comes in and out of your organization. So it's not monitoring the people in terms of what they do, but it's just what happens on a network level also, in terms of, so to identify any suspicious behavior. You would see traffic that coming in from, just on a firewall, you would see traffic coming from a number of different countries, countries that are really not supposed to. You would want to know why this amount of traffic coming from, let's say, parts of China, some parts of the Middle East, that kind of thing. You would see they have no business really with your organization. Then you see traffic coming from there. That will start to get you a little bit suspicious. So those are the things you need to look for. Again, the hardware and the software that they have would be able to detect some of these anomalies and be able to now alert you and send alerts to help you now understand that, okay, something within the organization is not going right within your network. Response planning, again, we would say response planning, you need to have a incident response plan, and you must be able to have a guide as to what you would do in the context of an incident. An incident happens, you see an anomaly event, you know who to report it to, you know what type of action should be taken, and you know what steps should be taken. Communication. You need to communicate with the necessary persons. In some cases, when a cyber event happens, you need to contact either the senior person. You must have that procedure. You must know when you need to contact your customers, you know when you need to contact your staff to inform them of the event or the issue. And again, communications was always within teams, within even the organization itself, within the relevant teams for those responsible for either the hardware, the software, or the systems, to be able to now get the right communication to them at the right time. Having persons to do analysis, so even if you have outsourced the analysis of an event, you can't do it inside, because again, as a small organization, it may be hard to have enough resources to conduct analysis of a threat or a threat incident. You need to then now identify somebody who could help, resource that could help, whether it's a vendor, whether it's, in essence, in some cases, you could look at the country that you're in, may have a CSIRT. They can help you to analyze what happens in the context of an incident, and then now allow you to now understand what happened in terms of the organization, so you could put measures in place within that breach or within the incident that happens. Mitigation measures. You need to put mitigation measures in place so that when it happens again, how can we protect this or stop this from happening? What we need to do, we need to implement new systems, we need to have a better process, we have to look at the procedure that we have. Those are some of the things. What can we do to mitigate or prevent these things from happening? Again, constant improvements. It's always an iterative cycle, looking at improvements to what we have and implementing, again, systems, policies, procedures to actually help us improve what we do. Even in responding, even in doing the detection, the protection, identification, we can improve it. So from the response perspective, we could respond faster. We could actually recover, in a sense, which will lead to increased recovery. So we will actually do improvements in how we treat with incidents and how we respond to incidents, so that we could ensure that we respond in a more timely manner or in a faster, shorter space of time to recover. Again, recovery planning. In order to recover, we need to have, again, plans in place. You must have a plan how we would recover, where we would get, if we have to have backups that we need to recover from, where it would be, whether it's hot or cold. We doing backups of the data or backups of information, whether it would be full, incremental, ensuring that it's working. A lot of people we encounter that even when incidents happen, the backup not working. When last they check the backup, they don't know. They haven't checked it in a while. Some of the backups get compromised. So it's having these fundamental plans in place so that you could actually recover. Again, it's about improvements, and recovery is about also communication. You need to communicate with your seniors when an incident happened along the process, up until recovery, as to what you did, what happened, so that they will understand and be aware of what the issue was, and they will know now what they need to say or how they will function in the context of an incident, and why they would need now to maybe put more resources towards it, and based on their understanding of what happened during the process. So the NIST framework is a nice framework that actually, cybersecurity, which covers the way to help build resiliency. Now this looks a little bit wordy, and it's a lot of information, so this is just information. But these are just some of the things that you could do to strengthen your resilience framework in order to ensure that your organization could be resilient. Assign someone senior within your organization, somebody at the senior level, a C-level person, who should be responsible for organization. One of the keys within any organization is that somebody senior should should have the responsibility for cybersecurity within the organization. At least be the person that the operational persons report to. An incident happens, somebody at that senior level should be informed, and then they should be able to help facilitate the necessary changes, the necessary updates, improvements, management of the cybersecurity program. They must be invested in it. That will help the organization develop that culture of cyber resilience that we would want to go to. Because if somebody senior is actually on board with the cybersecurity program, then that you could have them help facilitate and ensure that the organization and the staff promote a culture. Now, culture of cyber resilience or cybersecurity, in a sense, would mean people being informed and being enabled to identify when attacks happen, understand when simple as malware and phishing, and that's something that we have to look at. You would get an email within your organization, and the email is a suspicious email, and a lot of people click on it, and they would continue. Simple as that. They would click on it, and then that would cause a breach within or a threat within the organization because the email is malicious, and it would now cause a program or a piece of ransomware, a piece of malware to be installed in the organization. Develop formal cybersecurity policies, having risk management policies, having incident management policies, all these policies that are relevant for your cybersecurity program, identifying your critical assets, having an incident response plan, all of these things are things, having an asset management plan. All of these types of plans are required to help develop a formal cybersecurity and strengthen your cybersecurity or your cyber resilience framework. Cyber resilience at the board meeting. In your board meetings, you should be speaking about how strong is the ability of the organization to respond to incidents, to treat with these threats and understand where they lie, how they would communicate with the staff, how they would communicate with stakeholders, how they communicate with your customers in the context of a cyber attack. And then again, having that boardroom level understanding of, okay, we can be susceptible to a cyber attack, how do we respond? Again, training for operational staff. In order to manage your infrastructure, your staff need to be trained, they need to understand what cybersecurity is. They need to understand the elements of that, and you have to facilitate training. Now, people tend to, in some cases, not provide training because they believe that eventually your staff will go. That's just the risk you have to take. But then when you do a risk assessment of having untrained staff, and you find that that could lead to your organization being breached, it may cost you less to train staff as opposed to not train them and then they not doing what they're supposed to do and not doing their job properly. So, building cyber resilience in the organization, you need to focus less on the technology, more on the people. The people is really your weakest link, and you need to make sure that you understand that you need to have skilled people and trained persons and persons who understand what cybersecurity is and the cybersecurity risks that could impact the organization. Have somebody, again, having skilled person to oversee operations is a key. Cyber resilience is not left to the team alone, which is the only, some people think that the cybersecurity should just be managed by a security team. No, that's why I spoke about the staff, the C-level persons, the board members. So general staff must be trained. So you're having a holistic program within the organization to guide and train persons and to make them aware of the procedures and processes that they need in order to build that kind of culture of cybersecurity or culture of cyber resilience. So at the end of the day, if they understand what they're supposed to do within a cybersecurity context, they can now take proper actions and understand the risk and understand the threats that may happen and be more aware of what they need to do in the context of cybersecurity. Incident response. Now, let's take a little bit. We don't have to go through this in detail, but if you want to develop your incident response capability within the organization, these are some of the things you need to do. You need to establish a formal incident response capability. Put someone in charge of incident response. It will help in terms of when an incident happens, the person who is supposed to manage manage the incident and help recover. Those are some of the things. You need somebody from the C-level to be responsible and then to the operational staff. So it is clear who is supposed to manage the incident when an incident happens. Create an incident response policy where you would develop now. Coming out of that, you develop the incident response plan. The incident policy dictates and help guides what's a security incident, who is responsible, what are the responsibilities, and how they should deal with it, and how they should report in terms of who they should communicate with in the context of a cyber incident. Have an incident response plan. The incident response plan will help guide when an incident happens, a really roadmap in terms of the type of incident, what we will do, the steps we would take, long-term and short-term in terms of recovery, as opposed to how we would identify what is a successful recovery from an incident. That tied to your incident response procedures, you will have to detail the steps again, using it, what steps the team would use in order to respond to an incident. And the incident response procedures would now dictate that on that level in terms of the direct procedures that you would use to manage your incident response. Now, I fear that I am running out of time. Right. The incident response life cycle. Again, this is just a life cycle that would guide how you would treat with incidents through preparation, and you should do some preparation activities, identify your assets, ensure that you understand what you're supposed to be monitoring in terms of what you're protecting in essence, and then once you identify the assets within the organization, you'll be able to now start to build out how we would now recover from an incident and what type of measures we should start to take. The detection, again, building a baseline of what your system should function like, what your hardware and software should function like, would help to now provide information that you can use to analyze what is normal activity as opposed to anomalies, and again, what would be deviations from normal behavior, so that at the end of the day, you can detect these issues and put yourself in a place that you could actually take proactive steps to manage any issues or any threats that you see coming towards the organization. Containment. If an incident happens, we need to contain it. We need to ensure that it impacts the least amount of our infrastructure as possible and as fast as we can. So the longer we take to contain any attack, it can move laterally across the organization. It can cause more harm to the organization. So you need to really provide containment services, in essence, which allows you to either stop connections or stop persons from accessing your systems. Those are some of the things you have to do. Eradication and recovery, again, is to get rid of the threat and again, recover your operations in a timely manner. And those are just some of the steps. This is an iterative process. You'd have to keep going around doing the process in essence. And your post-incident activity would then now lead to you asking questions after the incident. What happened? Why it happened? How well the team respond, or how well you respond to the incident? Was your measures effective? Was your processes effective? Where you get your information from? And again, looking at things that you could do better, looking at how what actions that you may have taken may either help or harm the recovery effort. Could staff share information in a timely manner? So if it is that there's a breach that maybe somebody got an email and they didn't share it, or they didn't identify that this was an issue or something suspicious happened, did these kind of things happen? So anything that you could look at at the end, after you're doing a post-mortem, in essence, that you could ask questions and identify where you would have not been effective enough. Those are some of the questions that you would like to ask and some of the things that you do. Because again, based on the iterative nature of the process, it can allow you to look at your shortcomings and then actually improve upon what you did before. And that's how it goes for every incident. You would do things right, and then there may be some things that maybe we could do a little bit better. So that's where the post-incident activity would help. And doing this process in an iterative manner would always help improve your incident response capability. These are just some of the fundamentals that we could look at to help assist in your incident recovery, ensuring that you have backups, having redundant connections that will make you recover faster, because at the end of the day, if you have redundant connections, It will help you to now provide your services, at least keep functioning, because the key behind incident and resilience is actually being able to keep functioning or keep your operations going. Redundant hardware, some people may have in the organization a particular server as a critical server, and they may only have that server as the one and only server. You need to build some redundancy within your hardware, your firewall, your switches. I mean, some organizations may not be able to fund that type of backup systems, in essence, or having a hardware or a firewall device sit down, they sit down in your organization, and they're not using it as a backup or a switch. So those are the things, yes, may be challenging for some organizations, but as much as you can, try to develop some form of redundancy, or at least have relationships with your vendors that you can access a backup piece of hardware, a backup piece of or some type of software or hardware that you could actually use now to help recover in your organization. SLA agreements with critical software and hardware, those are fundamentals, and those are having SLAs are basic requirements of you having critical systems, and you should have them, as much as they may cost a little bit. But it would be nice, especially for your critical systems. It may not be for all, but at least for your critical systems, you should have some form of SLA. Documented network configuration and administration process. We have encountered that when we go to deal with incidents that you do not have, some organization may not have an updated or current or correct documented network configuration. So you are now going to help them, and they do not truly understand how the network functions, what devices they have on the network, how it's configured, in order to help to recover from the incident. It might sound like, yeah, that doesn't happen, but it does. And some people, just because, again, IT people especially tend to not like documentation. That is just how it is. But it's something that you need to ensure that you have in order to recover, in order to help and aid in the recovery process. So, key points to note. Assign somebody at C-level or at your charge of your organization, or the head of your organization, a senior person, that'll be a champion or just in charge of cybersecurity. So that'll be the go-to person, that the person you report into. You should have somebody at that level to report your, to be the person who is responsible, taking charge, who have that avid interest in actually developing that cybersecurity program within your organization. For the small organizations, it still needs to be someone. You need to have a resource that is actually able to answer and push a cybersecurity program or that cybersecurity posture within the organization to improve it, so that they could improve your posture. So pushing the program to improve that posture within the organization. Identify cyber risk to the organization by adopting cyber risk planning. That is something that a lot of organizations may or may have not done already. And it's something that you need to do. So identifying the cyber risk to your organization, and then actually putting a plan in place to help mitigate that. Sorry, folks. This was good. Develop and implement an incident response plan. Incident response plan is fundamentally important in your resiliency plan. It guides how you would respond to an incident. It guides who would respond to the incident, what measures they would take, and how they would function in that. And when the incident happens, it's very helpful when an incident happens, and at that point in time, you are really running to avoid running like a headless chicken, in a sense. And trying to recover your operations. Assign a resource to be the focal point of the plan. Make sure that persons in the organization know who is the point of contact, in essence, or the cybersecurity officer, for want of a better word. Have somebody and have the organization know that if a breach happens, if an incident happens, you need to talk to this person. You need to send the email to this particular desk or this particular email address, or contact this particular person when you believe a cyber incident happens. Education and awareness. Educate your employees and develop a culture of cyber hygiene. Ensure that your employees understand what are the things that they should do, and ensure that they are aware of cyber threats. They are aware of what they need to do in terms of their procedure.
Angus?
Yes?
One question. We have a question here just before you move on. Loan is asking, can you project the previous slide? Please. Thanks.
This one?
Which one, Luan? Is it the measures to assist incident? I'm waiting for a response in the chat.
Sure.
But I think we are close to our question and answer segment. So I think you could go along and then you may answer our question later
And
on.
that was the last slide actually I was on.
Okay. I'm trying to find out the slide she is making reference to.
All right, no problem. I can always go back.
All right, do you have any questions? Thank you very much, Angus, for a very informative. I was sitting here, it seems like a lot of IT, a lot of risk-related stuff, but as it relates to cybersecurity for even here in Jamaica and across the region, as you mentioned, the risk, and since we're going through the pandemic, we've realized that a lot of other organizations, a lot of persons are coming out. The risk is even greater because you mentioned about ransomware and phishing. We've had some organizations here that have been attacked since the start of this year, or even since the start of the pandemic. And you mentioned something that I wrote down. You said training is critical to the development of a robust security framework. And it has to be a strategic approach, and not just for a department or a unit, because we have to train persons as it relates to this part of it. I took away those points. I saw something again. You said something about building a culture around cybersecurity. So, penultimate, previous slide, penultimate. Thank you, Loan. Penultimate, right? Okay, you found it? All right, so if you have any questions, we will give you about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes for question and answer. If you have any questions, you may go ahead. You may type it in the Q&A. You may type it in the chat. I want to hear from you. If you have any questions, you're welcome, Luan. Based on your experience, Angus, have you found that I mentioned earlier about increasing attacks across the Caribbean since the start of the pandemic? Have you had any personal experience, or have you heard of any organization that have been attacked, major organizations?
The pandemic, yes, we have seen an increase in essence in basically these things: ransomware, phishing attacks, and basically phishing attacks and denial of service. Those are the three things that we have seen since the pandemic has started here and maybe across the region a little bit. I can say for as a fact, yes, ransomware attacks, phishing email scams, a lot of phishing email scams, and we have instances of denial of service. So they attacked particular services for various reasons, whether it's hacktivism or political reasons, or they just wanted to bring down a service because it was related to a particular function. But we saw denial of service attacks and phishing and ransomware, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Will we be getting the slides? Since
Yes.
no one is asking, okay, awesome. So we'll find a way to share the slides with the participants who are a part of the session here, who joined us in our session. And thank you very much for joining. Do you have any more questions? We'll give you another. All right, question. Does Mr. Smith conduct private training session with companies, and how do I get that contact information? Do you wish to share that now, or do you want us to send them directly to Mr. Williams? Right?
There's a slide, actually the last slide I have, actually
okay, you could project that one, sure.
Right, so yes, they can contact us.
All right, so we will be going back over to the stage area. They're saying very good presentation. Thank you again, very informative, very insightful there. And of course, we saw that you're an expert in your field. So we invite you to move over to the main stage where we take it down and wind down the second day of the 63rd Annual International Convention. I'm Katrina Grant de Aguilar. Angus, it was a pleasure moderating your session today.